There are few places in Lower Saxony with as many different animals as the Südheide, the southern part of Lüneburg Heath. The age-old landscape, shaped by human hands, has changed its appearance many times over the centuries. Rare animals, now extinct elsewhere, can still find a safe haven here, such as the shy black stork. Created by humans, this natural oasis offers everyone space to live. Be it the demanding crane or the easygoing wild boar or red deer. A spring morning somewhere between Celle and Münster, Uelzen and Bergen. Strange sounds are wafting over to this roebuck. A black grouse, its crown is raised. The wattles over its eyes are very obvious during the mating season. The males meet for their annual combat, or leg, at certain places that have been used for generations. The birds favor open landscapes such as heath and moors, habitats that have become scarce. Flutter jumps are part of the display. This makes the cocks visible from a fair distance away. They continuously challenge each other to combat. The winner has the best chance of mating. Of the 200 black grouse which remain in Germany, a quarter live in the Südheide. Where there is heathland, the sheep, known as Heidschnucken, are not far away. Shepherdess Nancy regularly drives her flock through the landscape, which was once created by heathland farmers to keep it free from scrub. A few goats are amongst them, for only they will eat regenerating birch and pines. The sheep prefer to eat ling and make sure it doesn't grow too high. The Südheide Nature Park was created nearly 50 years ago. It covers 480 square kilometers. In contrast to what the name suggests, most of it is covered in woodland. In 1975, a huge fire destroyed large parts. Today, none of the damage is visible. A female badger spends the day with her cubs in her set. Badgers only tend to leave their sets at dusk. If they feel safe, they might stick their noses out a little earlier, especially when the nights are getting shorter. The badger sniffs carefully where a foe has left a scent. Badgers can't see very well, but their sense of smell is very good. Only a short trip, and then the badger returns to her young. She has not given birth to any young this year. These 3 are more than a year old. The offspring still seek the proximity of their mother. Badgers are very sociable animals. Some move away after a while, others stay in their mother's set all their lives. Cuddled up nice and warm, it's not difficult to pass the time till dusk. Not far from the woodland, on the edge of a track, a different household has also occupied a hole in the ground. Adders. They've spent the winter hibernating underground. In contrast to the sociable badgers, the reptiles come together only through necessity. The warmth of the sun that reaches through the earth wakes them up. It won't take long for the knot to disentangle. Willow trees flower early in the year. A magnet for many insects. There isn't much nectar around at this time of year. Three to 4 weeks later, the trees start leafing. The deer find many juicy herbs in the meadows. Animals with black fur are a local speciality. Their siblings are often born with the normal red-brown fur. Only if both parents pass the gene for black fur to their offspring are they born black. All sources show that they've been seen in the Südheide for over 1,000 years. The apparent peace in the meadows is deceptive. Deer have many foes and have to keep watch constantly. A fox looking for food. It's better to warn the others. This cunning predator can harm the fawns. Next to woods and heathlands, moors are a distinctive landscape in the Südheide, a relic of the Ice Age. Many moors were destroyed through turf cutting, but they've been restored in the last few decades. The project was successful. Cranes have returned to the Südheide. In the 1960s, they had disappeared. In 1987, they returned. Today, 180 pairs breed in the region. The adults take turns at childcare. When one of them goes to find food, the other comes to watch the nest. Cranes are ground-nesting birds and prefer areas that are surrounded by knee-deep water. This makes it difficult for wild boar, foxes and other egg thieves to get close to the nest. Carefully, the crane turns the eggs to warm them evenly. As in 90% of cases, there are 2 eggs. The female laid them in the space of 1 or 2 days and started incubating immediately. The young will hatch after 4 weeks, also 1 at a time. Once the partner has eaten, it stays close to the nest and keeps watch over the incubating bird and the eggs. There is little now to recall the devastating fire. The Südheide was reforested over large areas. Pine trees are the best species for this poor soil. Wild boar are at home in this coniferous woodland. The piglets are a week old. The mother gave birth to them in hiding. Now she returns to her pack, or sounder. The piglets play at gardening the woodland. There could be something edible under each piece of wood. Fighting is popular too. Perfect training for later life. As soon as the mother appears, they have only one thing on their mind. In a well-run sounder, the lead sow makes sure that all the females have offspring at the same time. Some accept unrelated piglets, others not. This sow makes it unmistakably clear what her feelings are. The synchronization of birth makes sense. The piglets can join in a crash where they can be protected against enemies. The mother only gives in to the urging of the demanding offspring when she has weeded out the other piglets. Finally, the babies get what they want. Every piglet sucks from its own teat, which it defends against others. No sooner is the meal over than the young turn back into sociable creatures. When they settle down for their nap, they all huddle together from their different broods and keep each other warm. In May, the yellow flag iris is in flower in the wet meadows, attracting winged visitors. Several streams flow through the Südheide. Otters have returned to some of them in the last 10 years. Persecution and habitat destruction made their lives very difficult for decades. The clear water of the river Lutter is a good hunting ground. Otters always eat their prey on land. The entire stream has been protected for many years. Otters can breed here undisturbed. The remote Lutter is also a refuge for the shy black stork. There are 15 to 20 pairs in the Südheide. Black storks are monogamous breeders. Every year they overwinter separately in Africa and meet up again when they return to their breeding grounds. The stream doesn't just provide fresh drinking water, but also lots of fish, their main food. 3 spined sticklebacks are widespread and can live even in brackish waters. Bitterlings, however, need clean fresh water. Only there does the freshwater pearl mussel live, which they use to lay their eggs. Mussels and bitterling have become rare elsewhere. Just like the minnow, which also finds the clean waters it needs in the Südheide. The black stork likes to eat them all. Brown trout are an indicator of clean water and are common in the Südheide. The large bird appreciates the big morsel. He handles the fish until he can swallow it head first, so he isn't injured by the bones. Until 200 years ago, heathland was the dominant habitat in today's nature park. With the invention of inorganic fertilizers, farmers could improve the quality of the sandy soil and turned many areas into meadows and fields. Deer love the mosaic of woodland and agricultural landscape. It offers them protection and food. At this stage, the father still tolerates his son, and the threat is only implied. The closer it gets to summer and the mating season, the firmer the adult will become. It won't be long before the young buck has to leave their territory. Now, though, they run away together from the enemy they scented. The fox is about again. The doe gives a nervous warning. Her fawn is close by in the long grass. It doesn't follow its mother around in the first 3 to 4 weeks of life, but waits well hidden for her to return. The doe keeps an eye on the fox. Should it get too close to her fawn, she will attack it and chase it away. The red deer also have young. The fawns are older and follow their mothers onto the meadow. Rich milk is preferable to fresh grass at this stage, though. An experienced hind is the leader of this group. She is normally the first to spot danger. Last year's fawns are too big for the fox now. This year's young, however, are on the fox's menu. The lead hind must stay alert. Today, the fox only has one thing on its mind. It's much easier for deer to spot danger in the open meadows than it is in the woodland. It was only when humans came to hunt them that they retreated into the forests. Success. The main food for this fox is mice, not red or roe deer. there is a comparatively large population of red deer in the Südheide. The mosaic of woodland and open farmland suits both fox and deer. Large parts of the Südheide are uninhabited, exclusion zones used for army training. Many animals retreat to these places, amongst them a family of wolves. The cranes also benefit from the exclusion zones. They can rear their young undisturbed on the moors. The first one has hatched. The guarding parent has to keep watch constantly to make sure nobody comes close. In the first few hours of life, the chick hides in the parent's plumage to warm up and recover from the exertion. It won't be able to contain its curiosity for long, though. Crane chicks are precocial birds and can walk from day one. They're not fed. At first, the parents just put a few morsels out. Trial and error. The chicks don't quite understand where to peck. The crane waits patiently until its offspring is ready for its first excursion. Hunger drives the chick to its parent. It knows instinctively that it will lead it to something edible. The other one has to continue brooding. The terrain is hard work for short legs. The effort pays off. Again and again, the adult bird shows the chick how to find food and eat it. If it doesn't work, try again. Something will go in eventually. The chick weighs 150 grams. In just 10 weeks' time, it will weigh 40 times as much. For a jay, the chick would be a good meal now. But the parents don't take their eyes off their chick for a moment. Hardly anyone can get past 2 grown cranes. After a strenuous walk, it's back to the featherbed. 2 days later, its sibling will hatch. Until then, the little crane has all the attention from both parents. In late May, the cotton grass goes to seed. The 4-spotted chaser has emerged. The larvae are developing well in the acidic moorland water. A little later, the boggerspodel is in flower. They have a restricted distribution in Germany and are protected. The adders have long since emerged from their underground hole. The males are looking for females to mate with. They can pick up the slightest scent with their tongues and take it to an olfactory organ in their palate. Few species of snake are as variable as the adder. Not every individual carries the typical black zigzag band. The male can tell from this female's scent that she's not ready for mating. The entire Südheide was covered in oak woodland in the early medieval period. Around 1,000 years ago, the first farmers settled and removed topsoil for their fields. The soils got poorer and the forest gave way to heath and later fields. Today, there are only fragments of oak woodland left. Now the fawn is old enough to follow its mother. Twins are not unusual with roe deer. The father is only rarely present. The fawn is not sure about the strange visitor. The family retreats into the protective wheat field. Nearby, a doe is suckling her fawn. It's 2 weeks older than the twins, but is still allowed to suck. Unlike red deer, roe deer do not form large groups with the lead animal, and the sexes do not live apart. The buck has a territory, which may, but needn't, overlap with that of the does. Mother and fawn have a close relationship. Female offspring often spend their whole lives close to their mother's territory. In contrast to the twins, this fawn is quite bold. Who is this big stranger? He seeks his mother's side, but then curiosity wins out. Shame that the buck doesn't understand the invitation to play. When darkness falls in the Südheide, the badgers emerge. Hunger has set in. It is time to go foraging. The young badgers have learned from their mother to be careful and check if the coast is clear. The mother is already out and about and is looking for food. One by one, the 3 offspring leave the set, which, like most sets, has several exits. The omnivores take what they can find, animal food such as larvae, as well as vegetarian options such as roots. They especially like earthworms. Tonight, the family find a lot of food. No need to stray far from the set. Some nights, the animals travel much further. The foraging area of a badger ranges from 1/2 to 3 square kilometers, depending on food availability, time of year, and numbers of other badgers locally. During the day, they feel safe in their set, and after a short time, the family fall asleep. Late June, the foxglove is in full flower. The spots on the calyx look like anthers and attract bumblebees. Foxgloves are one of the first plants to colonize new clearings, and they're a paradise for wild boar. The adults eat first, and they ensure there is no misunderstanding there. The animals ignore the poisonous foxglove. They're looking for something else. They move aside heavy logs and root clumps with their strong snouts. Underneath, there are tasty morsels like insect larvae, earthworms, and mice. In the midday heat, the sounder retreats for a bath. The numerous fire protection ponds, which were installed after the Great Fire, are very handy for that purpose. The wild boar don't just use them to cool down. With their long snouts, they can feed underwater. There is hardly anywhere that the hardy hawks can't find food. The remote woodlands in the Südheide are perfect for them. In midsummer, the badgers sometimes appear before sunset. It's time to make the bed. In contrast to foxes, the large relatives of the stoat and weasel cushion their sets with hay or leaf litter, which they replace every so often. Dry summer evenings are the best time for that. Bottom first, that's easiest. The young watch curiously. After all, they want to settle in their own homes one day. They aren't that interested in domestic chores, though. Finally, one of them steals some bedding. The young badgers don't stay together every night. Often they go on their own like the adults. Typical badger, cuddles up during the day and sets off alone at night. The young satisfy their hunger and leave their mother to the work. The badger carefully arranges her sleeping area. The badgers have a thick coat, but the bedding provides extra warmth in cold nights. Whilst the young have no thoughts yet of coming home, the mother has a rest. The start of a new summer's day. There is tension in the air with the deer. The fawn want to drink, but their mother isn't paying attention. The buck marks his territory constantly. The wind carries the message he's been waiting for. The doe is ready to mate. But she's also a mother, and wants to suckle her young. Finally, she gives in and entices the buck to a chase, a typical courtship ritual amongst roe deer. These circular tracks are known colloquially as fairy rings. The doe is only fertile for 24 hours. During this time, the buck doesn't leave her side and mates with her repeatedly. This increases the chances that she will conceive. A long time passes between mating and birth. In order to forestall a winter birth, the fertilized egg only starts developing in December, and the fawn is born in early spring. August, peak of the heather blossom. The ideal territory for the garden spider. Many winged heathland animals are caught in her net. The shepherdess uses the nice days. But the postcard idyll is deceptive. This herd is one of the last, still crisscrossing the Südheide. Many shepherds said they couldn't make enough money and gave up the business. If there are no more Heidschnucken, then the heath will go too. If the area isn't grazed, it will scrub over. Only around 1% of the natural park area is still heathland. The old agricultural landscape created by humans was slowly turned into forestry and fields. Without management, these last islands of heath will be a thing of the past. In September, a special spectacle starts in the woodland. Exhausted after a hard night, the stag is gathering new strength. The rut in the nearby clearing continues without him. More stags from the surrounding area constantly join the females in the traditional rutting areas. With loud noises, each wants to intimidate their competition. Being noisy is not enough. Fighting ensues. Despite the dangerous antlers, the animals are rarely injured. The rules are to shove the opponent away with full force. The antlers aren't a weapon, but keep the opponent at a distance. The one on the left gives up. But maybe next time it will be different. The mosaic of meadow and woodland, moor and heath attracts many animals in the region. They find a haven in the numerous reserves and exclusion zones. There are tasty morsels on offer in the woodland in autumn. The acorns are ripe. The badger is just one of many animals they attract. The calorific fruits help him to put on enough reserves for the winter. Badgers eat little else at this time. Images that recall bygone times, when the farmers drove their pigs to the oak mast in the woods. The domestic hogs got their preference for these fruits from their wild forebears. If the wild boars aren't fed during the winter, then the number of acorns decides how many survive the cold months. Often, winter comes to the Südheide overnight, transforming it into a snowy wonderland. The badger family has gone underground and sleeps through most of the winter. They don't really hibernate in the strict sense, and their body temperatures only fall by a few degrees. Occasionally, they wake up or even leave their set, but they will only be seen regularly again from the end of February. This fox didn't make it. Even though the mouse hunter can find the small rodents deep under the snow, he obviously didn't find enough to eat. He's now an important source of food for crows and buzzards. The deer gather together in large groups. They have to scratch the ground for a long time before they find greenery. They always find some morsel or other in the Südheide, a region which only reveals on closer inspection what a true nature paradise it is.